We all like cheap mods for our bikes, mods that make us faster or make us look faster. And we especially appreciate a cheap mod if it's, cheap. But at what cost?
The first mod that comes to mind is a new set of levers. More adjustable, cleaner looking, shorter, call it how you want it. At the end of the day, there are only a few points of contact between us and the machine we're trying to tame underneath. And the levers, they are the most essential.
And we have options. We have the name brand ones, and then we have the Aliexpress versions. There are more Chinese levers on the market than copycat Beats headphones, but unlike those, can Chinese levers actually be better? And can we save a pretty penny while at it?
These are the Chinese levers that I ordered from AliExpress. They came in this yellow packaging. They did come in bubble wrap. They look decently well made. I mean, you can see some CNC errors, I guess, or places where it's not as smooth as I would expect them to be. Okay, so they have adjustments for how far or how close to the handlebar they should be. Why can I do this? Okay, this is not cool. I could go past one. You can see here, you can see where like two sides were put together. The paint has some imperfections on it and it makes it quite abrasive to the touch, which is obviously not ideal. It's chipped right around the lettering over here. Their finish, for the amount of money I paid for them, I would say it's not bad. This is a pair of levers made by Performance Technology. They are legit. They are actually made in Italy. I think they spent on them more than 200 euros, like 200 or 250 euros for this set. There is no CNC machining error. Everything is so incredibly tight and precise. This is not combined. This is not made of two pieces. This is made from one solid block. They're so much better. Yeah, you can see absolutely no imperfection on them, no nothing. It's just the way they're built, right? They spared no cost, you know? Yes, you're spending a lot of money for these, but at the same time, you're also getting a lot. At the end of the day, I paid just $11.76 for this pair. Both the PTs and the AliExpress ones are made of billet aluminium.
For reference, this material is obtained by heating and pressuring aluminium into metal blocks, making the resulting block quite tough. Then these blocks are cut out at a CNC machine and you get your levers. And it is strong, since this exact material is used in fields like construction, heavy machinery, and many others. It is tough.
What's even tougher though is admitting that these Chinese knockoffs can actually kill you.
The most obvious way you could think of is them just snapping apart. Obviously not all billet aluminium is built the same, there are differences.
But even so, if they were to just break apart, they would do so after a crash was initiated. They might break during the crash, but them snapping out of thin air just shouldn't happen.
No, the problem is actually much worse. And it's worse because, as all good killers, this one is hiding in the shadows. You can't see it coming.
One thing you can see coming is me asking you to subscribe to this channel if you like the content, of course.
Internet horror stories. You can find them on any topic, it's nothing new. But when so many people flag something as being so wrong, it might be worth taking their opinion into consideration. You see people crashing the day after they installed aftermarket mods. Some are lucky, getting away with just some scrapes on their bikes. Some are not. And there's nothing they can do about it. And it's not just one brand, it happens to anyone. From Tourers to Nakeds, from Hondas to Yamahas and Triumphs, nobody is left out of the danger zone. You look for all these crashes carefully. They're not rider errors. All different bikes, all in different places, different scenarios, but all have one thing in common, a pattern. The levers. And the answer to the why question is pretty well hidden. It all lies in tolerances.
If something is not right with the clutch lever, you might slip the clutch or even burn it out. You might stall. Inconvenient, sure, but not deadly. The brake lever though, that's where the real danger lies.
Long story short, because of manufacturing tolerances, you may end up with a wrongful install. The seating of the lever won't be correct, and so it won't sit exactly in the position the manufacturer originally intended for it to sit in. And that's a problem.
You see, if this end of the lever doesn't line perfectly with the little piston inside the brake pump, it might constantly apply pressure on the piston.
If this little end is just a fraction too long, it will keep the piston engaged. This constant pressure might feel like nothing in the beginning, but it's there. And in a nutshell, it will always keep your front pad slightly pressed on the rotor. Basically, it will slightly drag your front brake, at all times.
This causes an unfortunate effect. The way brakes work is that when idle, they get air through them and the entire system cools down. Then when you apply the brakes, the friction between the pads and the rotor generates heat, and that heat dissipates into the system.
If your brake never fully releases though, the brake fluid never gets a chance to cool down, and it will only get hotter and hotter.
This is a canister of brake fluid. Some bikes out there use mineral oil, but most actually use DOT fluid.
Unfortunately, DOT fluid also has one characteristic that just facilitates our disaster. It expands with heat. The more heat you get into the fluid, the more it grows in volume.
You see, a braking system is a closed loop. No air or fluid gets in or out. There is a finite amount of space in there. So what happens when you have the same amount of space, but the fluid inside is larger? It has to push a weak point out to create more volume. And in our case, the weak point can only be the caliper piston.
There are two scenarios here. One, the pressure inside gets too high and the part of the braking system explodes. At that point, you lose all pressure in the system, and by doing so, you lose all brakes.
That's Maverick Vinales. There'll be a red flag.
But that's quite uncommon. Maybe if your brake lines are really old or frigid, but still, it's highly unlikely. You see, what is likely is for the caliper pistons to push the brake pad on the rotor hard. Imagine if while riding, someone just suddenly applies the brakes at full force. Randomly. That's the real danger. The front brake can lock up and seize, and at that point, you can imagine the scenario. And no, ABS won't help. We're way past the point where electronics like that can do anything. I know this explanation is pretty basic, but I hope it provides enough context. Because to understand the gravity of a problem, you have to understand the problem itself first.
You see, by not having the right tolerances, these Aliexpress levers can cause your front brakes to drag and ultimately can cost you your life. The stakes are pretty high. But that's not to say that anything that comes from China is dangerous. Heck, even some brand name manufacturers build their things in China. What's really important here is the quality control. When someone sells you a pair of levers for a little over the cost of a Subway sandwich,
do you really think they spend the R&D and QC costs to make sure that every single lever is machined perfectly? I thought so.
Ultimately, it's all down to the cost of making sure every product is built perfect. And when price is the only dictating factor, these shadow manufacturers don't give a damn on perfection.
For them, it's all just money lost. For us, we can lose things far more important than money.
And the issue is that a lot of the times, we can't really do the QC ourselves. First, these tolerances are so small that an average Joe wouldn't have the tools or knowledge to measure them.
And speaking of knowledge, how would you even know what these tolerances were supposed to be in the first place? The reality is, you don't, and you can't check them. And when you realize something is wrong, it's usually too late.
I see the counter-argument. They're cheap. I saved over $200 on these Chinese pair compared to the brand name ones. Also, most people don't have any issue with them. For most people, Aliexpress levers work just fine. But is most people good enough? This is not a democratic vote where anything over 50% is good enough. This is about our own lives, where even 99% might not be good enough.
If you're still not convinced, just picture the scenario. You buy some bling Aliexpress levers. You install them, and you happen to draw the short straw.
You crash in a corner because of them, and you hit a car on the opposing lane. The collision sends you to the hospital, where you're now left with more broken bones than intact ones.
And you're lucky to still be alive. You're sitting on your bed, and at that time, if I asked you if you would pay $200 to not be in that situation, would you? Because I think I know my answer.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to check out this other piece I made on all the upgrades I had to do to go racing. Please also subscribe to the channel and consider leaving a like. And until next time, have a good one. Bye.